And welcome to the super fun, awesome, happy time pedal show. My name is Gabor and today I'm looking at this. So Arturia have just released the Effects Collection 2, all the effects you'll actually use. Should mention right from the start that this is sponsored by Arturia, so they've sent me the whole package in advance. I had a chance to play around with it for a little while. I think it's really cool, and I thought I'll show you two plugins out of this for now. That are new, that work really well with guitars. Now, if there's any of those plugins you want me to do a full video on, let me know. I've done, for example, on the delays, I've done a video, just a quick run through on all three delays a while ago, which is up there, and I'll also link to everything in the description below. But this is basically what's new now. So if we scroll down, basically you get 7 new plugins, which is sort of, it's really 3. 4 of them are the modulation effects, which is like the Dimension D, which I did a video of here, and the phaser and a flanger and the chorus June 6, which I did a video of as well, and that's linked below. And then you have those modulation effects are included, and then you have, where are they? These 3. These are the 3 new ones: Bus Force, Comp Diode, and EQ Citral. Now, I'm going to look at Bus Force today because I think it's a really powerful plugin for guitar and when you're mixing guitar and stuff like that. I'm actually going to be using it as an effects processor running into the amp, so kind of almost like pedals. So this is what you get. You get those 3. You get the 3 modulation effects. You get the 3 compressors, the 3 delays. That's the other thing I'm going to look at. There's a new gain stage thing on the Space Echo kind of thing. I'm going to be looking at that as well. The 3 reverbs, which are actually really good. I should do a video on those. The 3 preamps and the 3 filters, which are really interesting as well. So that's the new stuff. That's what you're getting in FX Collection 2. Now, I thought to make it easier on myself, I'm going to use amp sim. So I'm going to use Amplitude. So this is the high amp amp in Amplitude, and I'm going to be using this just for something different, this Fender Elvis Costello Jazzmaster. So this is in no way, shape or form sponsored by Fender. This is a guitar I bought many years ago. This sort of started my love of offset guitars really when I got this. It's slightly modified with mastery, bridge and vibrato, and I put some Mick Brearley pickups in it as well. Again, none of them, I bought all of them that were not sponsored in any way, shape or form. I just wanted a guitar sound that's sort of on the edge of breakup, and this is kind of what it is. So this is what it sounds like. And if you dig in a bit, get a little bit of drive. It's pretty much the, if you want to know, it's the more drive preset, but I turned the volume, which is the gain, bass and treble down a bit. Pretty much that's it. I haven't touched anything else. Okay, so let's have a look at Bus Force. So Bus Force basically is, it was on, but it makes no difference because it was set to nothing. Bus Force is basically a multi-effects processor. So you've got an EQ section, you've got a filter section, a compression section, and a saturation section. And I think one of the main ideas behind it is to run in parallel processing. So you have actually 3, if I click on this, it's really visual. That's actually one of the things I really like about it. It shows you the routing. So at the moment, you have 3 parallel paths basically. So the signal splits into 3 and you can process the 3 paths separately, which is kind of cool. So one is what's called your dry path, which basically is the one that runs along the top here, which has nothing in it, or you can put the EQ in it, right? But I have it actually set to mute, and you have a volume control for each, so you can blend them in as well. I've got that set to mute at the moment. Then you also have the compression path. So the compression, you can have EQ, filter, and compression in it, which is the middle one. I have that muted as well. And then you have the saturation path. And the saturation path has EQ, filter, compression, and saturation in it. And for guitar, I think for now, for pre-amp, so before the amp processing, I think a straight signal path is much better. If you were to do any processing after the amp or in a mixed bus or something like that, which I guess that's what it's for, Bus Force, you could use parallel processing, but we're just going to do everything in one, right? So everything is basically going, the signal comes in, goes through the EQ, through the filter, through the compressor, and then through the saturation. And then you also have a clipping stage before everything goes out. So at the moment, everything is on. You have a little switch where you can switch things on and off, but everything is set to nothing. So it basically doesn't know difference, right? So if I play a chord, maybe ever so slightly different, but it's pretty much the same, right? So what I want to look at to begin with is the saturation section. So this is for guitar players the most interesting thing, and you can really kind of you can really tailor the guitar sound, and really, I think, particularly for if you want certain guitar parts to really cut, this plugin is really, really good. So we've got up here, up the top, we've got this thing called harmonics, right? So harmonics is basically, it adds harmonic content into your guitar signal. The thing that's really cool is it's very visual. So as you click on any of the knobs on any of these things, this screen here shows you what's going on basically. So if you click on EQ, it shows you the EQ, which at the moment does nothing. Filter at the moment does nothing. Compressor at the moment does pretty much nothing. And saturation. So saturation, for example, looking at harmonics, if I turn harmonics up, you can see the wave shape changing. Yeah. And you also can change between even, odd, and thick harmonics. So if we look at even harmonics, and also again, if you look at the wave shape, it changes, well, as you turn it on, it changes ever so slightly as soon as you put that in there. So it gives you slightly different wave shapes. So let's just start off by, I'm going to play a chord and bring in harmonics just to hear what the difference is. Just the harmonics on them by themselves are quite subtle, but then I think odd harmonics are the best one for guitar. So it adds a little bit of sizzle there, and it's a feel thing as well. Without it, it just adds life to it, in my opinion. And then you've got thick harmonics too, which I think that looks more at the lower frequencies. You can hear that the thick harmonics is almost like a fuzz-like thing, so without it. So it adds a character to it. Now, the interesting part is when you start blending that with the overdrive. So you actually have an overdrive here as well. And you have a makeup gain. So this is you can turn the gain down a bit. So if you add overdrive, you add volume as well. Now if we go to, I think odd harmonics are my favorite on the guitar. Kind of adds this little sizzle up the top, which is really nice. You also have this little curve thing down here, which I think is an EQ shift. Sounds like an EQ shift to me. And from what I gather is that's before the saturation. So that is an EQ shift that runs into the saturation. So that sounds pretty cool already. So it adds drive. So it adds life to it. So it's almost like a distortion pedal, right? But now what we can do is, with this, there's some sort of very high frequency artifact effects. So it's that ice picky kind of stuff. How can we get rid of this? So for example, we can use a filter for that. Now the filter is basically a high pass and a low pass filter. Now high pass filter, it's kind of all in the name. It lets high frequencies pass and cuts low frequencies. A low pass filter lets low frequencies pass and cuts high frequencies. So what you can do is, right, by moving this, it's very visual again. You can see what it does. You can actually remove some of these high frequencies. can also remove some of the low frequencies if you want. Which to me, that makes a huge difference. And then you have what's called the peaks. So you can actually turn them into what's called a resonant filter, which is kind of like what you get on synthesizers. So, and again, it's very visual. As you turn this up, you can see that move up to the point where it goes really super over the top resonant. So you can have it you can make it a more square looking filter. Then you can also boost these frequencies and turn it into like a crazy filter. And then you can do the thing where you definitely have to move your mouth when you do it. You can move the filter. And you have to. Kind of like almost a wah kind of thing. But to me, actually, just removing some of those really high frequencies and removing some of the really low frequencies actually sounds really good. If you turn that off, there's this really high-end stuff. I guess depending on what you're listening to it, if you're listening to it on your phone, you probably can't hear it. But if you're listening to it with good headphones or through good speakers, you can kind of hear that really high-end stuff. So just that made a big difference. But then you've got an EQ, so what do I do with the EQ now? So with the EQ, you can kind of do the same thing, right? So the EQ is basically a 3-band EQ, right? So you've got your low frequencies, your high frequencies, and you've got presence, which is kind of the mids, right? And then what you can do is with the low frequencies, so you can roll off all the low frequencies or boost low frequencies. You can change a curve. The curve just means how steep the roll off is. And you also get this little boost as you roll off, which is often a nice thing. And then you can select where you want the frequencies to be. And all three are basically the same. I mean, if they go from 10 hertz to 30 kilohertz, so it's the entire spectrum, actually way past what the guitars lives in, basically, right? But you can pretty much set this, you can move that EQ around to wherever you want it to be. So you can kind of do a similar sort of thing with this. You can say, okay, I want to remove a lot of the low frequencies here, but maybe boost them a little bit there. And, you know, kind of the same thing you do with the filters if I don't filter them. So you can do kind of a similar sort of thing. The cool thing is when you start using them combined, because the presence bit, for example, the presence bit is sort of like a peak or a trough, right? And you can also adjust the width of that. So you want it to be very broad or very specific frequencies. And I think what's really good often with guitars is you can find frequencies that are really annoying and ear-piercing, and you can find them and try and remove them. So and you can, again, it's very visual. You can see there's that very resonant frequency here. You can do is you can pull it back. Move that frequency that's kind of a bit annoying. That's not necessarily that annoying. Let's find a more annoying. What about this one here? I think this one is a good one, around 1,000 hertz. And you can also say, I want it to be a bit wider to remove more of that frequency. So to me, that's starting to sound really, really cool. And then you can add some compression to it on top of it all. Now, this is quite a very, very, very massively strong compressor. You can go into extreme limiting as well with this. The cool thing again is it's very visual. So you can see on here, you can see that little dot, and this is sort of where it is, and you can set the threshold. So if you set the threshold, you see that it moves down, right? So the threshold is where, at what point the compression begins. And you can even get it to a point where this force thing goes, once you get in the middle there, you've got that infinity symbol. Once you go past it, it's really like limiting, quite hard limiting. And you can get it so you can really hear what it does. By doing that, you can really hear that when it gets above a certain threshold, it really grabs the note and then it gradually brings it back. Now that's not necessarily what you want to do, but you know, move it up a bit. Just get a bit of... And you can change the attack time, you can make it a quicker attack and maybe slower release. So the way I look at it is it's a really cool tool as a guitar player when you're recording to really find specific frequencies you want the guitar to sit in. Or if you have a lead sound and you want it to really cut, with the filter and EQ, you can really find a space for it to sit really well, use some compression, add some extra saturation. Oh, and lastly, I almost forgot, you also have the clipping section. Now the clipping section, it's not like a volume, you're not adding volume and clipping, it's the threshold on where clipping starts. So at the moment, if you turn it on, it's set to 0, right? So it needs the sound would have to go past 0. So what you got to do is you got to turn it down. So now it's below 0. So you can see now where the clipping starts. So you set it how many dB below 0 the clipping starts. And with this, you can almost make it sound like a fuzz. Like if you turn the saturation off, so this is just the amp sound again with the EQ and stuff, but I mean no saturation. So now what you can do, for example, is turn the input trim up. So this is the input gain going into the effect. So that's adding a lot of drive now already. See, everything is in a red, but it sounds good. It's good sounding drive. Then we can turn the clipping on, and then it turns into a fuzz, basically. Then if we turn the saturation on again, turn the overdrive off, turn this to thick harmonics and crank that. I think that sounds cool. So, I mean, this is using it in probably ways that it's not necessarily meant to be used at, but I think it sounds really, really cool. I like it. Okay, well, let's turn it off. So that's the bus force, right? So that was just a look at how you could use it as an effects unit in front of an amplifier, basically, right? Now, the next thing I want to look at quickly is the other thing that's new in this is their Space Echo kind of thing has these things now, which are different preamps. So I think it didn't have that switched at all, the previous version. Now you basically have the normal RE201 preamp. You have no preamp, but you also have a vintage germanium preamp you can use. So let's have a look at this. So now if is it on? I think it's on now. So now we've got a normal delay, right? But we can, let's turn the intensity down and turn the repeat rate down. So now you basically have no delay. So a lot of people back in the days, guys like Jimmy Page and lots of people used echo units, tape echo units like this particular one that this one is modeled off, or the Echoplex or a few other ones. They use it for their preamp to actually push the front end of their amp. So this is, you can basically do a similar sort of thing, right? And actually it's got all wet on this as well. So what we can do is we can set via the input drive, we can kind of drive it a bit more. So at the moment it's set to no preamp. So this is just driving the plug-in basically. Now, if you go into the original RE201 preamp, it's a slightly different sound, which I actually prefer to the no preamp. And it also does, and I think that's one of the reasons why I use it, it added an EQ kind of thing to it, a tone to it. It's more presence, it has more top end. The germanium one sounds really cool. I don't know what I'm playing with. Does it actually do anything? Yes, it does. So you can add, let's get rid of some treble. Let's add a bit of reverb on top of that. Ooh, that's a big reverb. That sounds cool. There's good modulation on it. Then you also have up here, you've got the advanced tab. I mean, this is just a quick thing on the side. I'll probably do a full video on this because this is a really cool unit. So you've got this here. You've got this LFO, right? So LFO is like a low frequency oscillator. So basically, what it does, it's a very slow sound wave that you can use to modulate things. Modulating means basically you can. It's like someone stands there and moves one of the knobs on here around. And the cool thing with this is you can actually send it to whichever knob you want to send it to. So, for example, you can send it to the where is it? The input volume, right? So, and it turns it into basically a tremolo right in front. The LFO amount also, so it doesn't go all the way on and off kind of thing. So you can make it a more subtle. And then you have different wave shapes too. So you've got, you know, if you want to do the really, you know, it's pretty cool. You've got sample and hold, which is kind of like a random thing. And so on and so on. I mean, it's hours of fun with this thing. I think they're really cool effects. Anyway, that's a quick look at 2 of the plugins. Like I mentioned before, if there's any of those Arturia Effects series plugins you want me to have a closer look at, let's go down a bit. Let me know in the comments below and I'll do a full video of it. Big thank you to the awesome people at Arturia for sending this out to me. There's also very shortly, there's all this stuff happening. The using modular on guitar, and the awesome people at Arturia sent us a rack brute for that. So stay tuned for these videos. That's coming up very shortly. Make sure to give us a thumbs up and subscribe if you like what we do. About 90% of our viewers are not subscribed, so please do. It really helps out. Big thank you to Arturia for sending me these plugins. Thank you to you all for watching, and see you next time. Bye.